Welcome to livingpianos.com. I'm Robert Estrin, and today's subject is so important. What is anti-practicing, and are you doing it? You may be. I'm going to tell you 3 telltale signs today if you are anti-practicing. What do I mean by anti-practicing? What I'm talking about are routines in your daily work that are actually destructive, that actually build negative habits in your playing. Now, there are many ways that you can be productive in your practice and an equal number of ways that you can be unproductive. One of the most telling signs that you may be doing yourself damage in your work is playing too fast. Playing too fast has so many negative repercussions in your playing. Now, one of them is changing your tempo. You have a piece and you have it going pretty well, and it's fun to play it because it's an exciting piece that you love, but there are just a few problem spots, and so you make accommodations, you slow down for those spots just so you can enjoy playing through the music. Now, why is this such a bad thing to do? Well, sometimes occasionally you might want to try it up to tempo to see how far you get and to see where the problem parts are so you can zero in and solve them. But if you're in the habit of doing this on a regular basis, what happens is you get so used to playing it that way, making those accommodations, that it's all but impossible to stop. Now, what are some techniques you can utilize in order to eradicate these changes of tempo and playing too fast? Well, obviously the metronome is an incredibly valuable tool. Find a speed that's the lowest common denominator that you can play everything at that tempo, and that will serve you really well. Now, there are other techniques you can use as well because, you might not want to play all of it slowly all the time. So instead, play up until you can't keep up with the metronome and zero in on those sections. Now, you could simply do metronome speeds. Find the speed at which you can play the treble passage and do, 1 or 2 notches on a metronome at a time until you get it up to speed. Or you can use other practice techniques, whatever solves the problems. Maybe it's playing hands separately. Maybe it's stopping on a strategic note, a note that you always miss, so you land on it a bunch of times so you feel secure with the very part that was giving you problems before. So that's one thing. Playing too fast is obviously going to be destructive if you do it on a regular basis with your music without solving the underlying problems in the sections you can't play up to speed. Another thing is, and this one is perhaps one of the most important ones, is going back just a little bit every time you make a mistake. You're playing through a piece, whatever it may be. You get the idea. Every time there's a mistake, you just go back and you kind of fix it. You think you fixed it, but of course you haven't fixed it. All you're doing is getting into the routine of making a mistake and going back slightly and continuing. So guess what happens in your performance? The same thing, because that's what you're used to doing. I've talked about this many times. Solving this issue really takes multi-steps. You might think, oh, you've solved it, but you haven't, because the next time it's likely to happen again, or maybe not the next time, but every few times you play it, those weaknesses are still there. So how do you get rid of them? First of all, when you have a little problem, a little slip up like that, stop. The first thing you need to do is stop and get out the music and find exactly where the problem was. And by the way, that's the hardest part of all. And I know you probably think you're the only ones who it's hard for you to find where you are in the music. No, it's hard even for me. And I take the time to do it each and every time because it's the only way you'll really reference the score to know what the problem is, the insecurity, and to clarify in your mind. So it's not just a motor memory thing that you may or may not get, but intellectually you understand the correction. Once you can play it faithfully, repeatedly, and you get it up to tempo and it's smooth, and you can play it at least 3 times in a row perfectly. Are you done? No, you're not done yet, because then you have to put it into context. And what I recommend, as I've talked about before, is go back a little bit first. and maybe 2 measures before the part that you already got perfect 3 times in a row. Go back 2 measures before that and get that 3 times in a row. Then finally go back to the beginning of the piece or the beginning of the section and be able to make sure you can think it through, because strangely enough, even after cementing the correction and even after being able to go back a couple of measures and get through it beautifully over and over again, you're still going to find that when you go back to the beginning of the piece, the same darn mistake will creep in again because you're not used to getting there with a correction from that point. So you have to think it through, and once you do that 2 or 3 times from the beginning, you've got it solved till the next part. So you go to the next part and you do exactly the same thing until you can faithfully go through the whole piece. You may have to work on sections of the piece. So, for example, if you have a sonatina or a sonata and you have a first exposition with a repeat, maybe just work on getting that whole section with the repeat solidly, and then get the other middle section solid and work on large chunks, ever larger chunks, until you've got the whole piece where you can get through it without any problems. And the last one I've talked about also, and I see students doing this, and I always stop them in their tracks, which is playing your mistake. As soon as you make a mistake, go, what did I do wrong? Where was that note? That's it. I played this. And I know it's so tempting to want to see what you did wrong, but all you're doing is concentrating on the mistake, and you're cementing the mistake. Anti-practicing, the very definition. You don't want to think your mistake, you want to focus on the correction. So those are the 3 things to concentrate on. Don't play too fast so that you can make sure you eradicate these problems. Sure, try your music up to speed just to see where you need to focus your attention. And of course, the second thing is don't just stop and go back a little bit and think you've corrected it, because you haven't. You may think you have because you went back and you got it, but the same thing is likely to happen again. And don't ever try to find your mistake. Instead, focus on the correction, and that's what will be paramount in your mind, and your performance will be stronger as a result. I hope these tips are good for you. Once again, I'm Robert Estrin. This is livingpianos.com, your online piano resource. Lots of videos to come. If you ring that bell, thumbs up, all that good stuff, so YouTube puts this video in front of more eyes, because if you love piano like I do, you want everybody to see these videos, right? Anyway, thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.